DDD has been the best deck in Duel Links for the past month or two. It has been dominating in tournaments, and it may have even just gotten a little bit better with a support that just came out in the most recent box with the full armor Photon Dragon and the other sort of a generic rank 8 support that this deck can go into. So it's going to do really well here in the kcgt. Number of reasons for that: we have an amazing skill which gives you a full pendulum board, gives you insane card advantage off of your searchers with your Kepler and Contract Gate. Also, those cards are giving you some insane consistency. You have a lot of versatility with this deck as well, with all the different effects you have in it. A versatile extra deck that gives you a bunch of different effects, both fusion monsters and XYZ monsters. Plus you still have room for some of that generic backer support in the deck as well. Tons of different things you can do with this deck to flood the board with big old monsters, slam your opponent's face in with it while gaining massive card advantage. This deck's absolutely insane. As I said, it's been dominating and will continue to do so, I think, through the kcgt. A huge reason for that is, of course, the skill command of the Doom King. Main thing with this is once you have a Doom King Armageddon in your hand, you can put this card to the top of your extra deck face up. And this is going to let you put 2 skills on your pendulum boards, one from the field and one from the deck. So usually you're going to start out with if you start out with just Kepler in hand, you can normal summon this, search your deck from the Dark Contract with the Gate, use this to search out Doom King Armageddon if you don't already have it in hand. Activate the skill, is going to put Armageddon on the top of your deck. Kepler is going to go into one pendulum zone, and then you can put a monster out of your main deck like Orthos into your other pendulum zone, and boom, you can immediately pendulum summon the Doom King Armageddon back to the board. And for just one card, with your skill, you're able to then basically kind of +3, right? Depending if you want to count the skills as, like, you know, full cards. Because you're now able to basically just turn one monster Kepler into 2 scales, an Armageddon, a 3000 attack point monster, as well as a Dark Contract with a Gate that you can search with every turn. So really powerful skill that just allows you to immediately set up your scales. And it's also good for future turns as well, because usually the Kepler has an effect that reduces its scales every turn, but its effect is negated the following turn, so you can pendulum summon with it in additional time. And then you can pop it with the Orthos too if you use this as your other skill, because its effect will no longer be negated during your main phase the next turn, so you can use the Orthos to pop the scale, destroy a back row on your opponent's side of the board, and just continue to rack up that card advantage. It's absolutely nuts. Another big thing you'll be doing too, a lot of times, is summoning the Savant Thomas off of this effect, or off of your pendulum summons rather. You can then pop one of your scales, summon another monster from your deck, another level 8, and that's going to let you go into your Rake XYZ plays really easily by getting up to 3 on the board super quick. A big thing you're going to be doing too if you go first is a lot of times you're going to go into the Giant King Trainer doing that play. You're going to summon, using your skill play, summon an Armageddon and the Thomas, use its effect to pop and summon another level 8, and you'll be able to go into the Coach King Giant Trainer with all 3 of your monsters, XYZ summon into it. Then you can draw 3 cards, and that's going to give you opportunity to draw into your back row cards, your Book of Moons, your Dark Contracts. So that's going to be a big play you're going to do turn 1 a lot of the time. Going second, you have a lot of ways to just put out tons of monsters onto the board. A way to protect your board is with the Flame King Genghis. So this is where your fusions sort of come into play. Going second, you can use the Swirl Slime, summon the High Flame King Genghis, and then this can negate 1 spell and trap effect per turn during your turn only. So it's not good for, you know, protecting your boards during your opponent's turn. But when you're making your play, trying to OTK your opponent, this card is amazing, being able to shut down their back row cards, forcing them to have to waste outs and resources on it. So you'll summon this, go through with your plays, being able to try to stop their back row with that. Orthos giving you other ways to pop your opponent's back row. And just try to OTK them again. This deck can so easily slam out giant level 8 monsters, getting that big old XYZ monsters, that it's very easy to OTK with this deck. Getting into the full deck list here, we have the 3 Doom King Armageddon. You could cut this to 2 if you only have 2, but I would highly recommend running it in 3. We have 2 of the Swirl Slime. You could also cut this to 1. I like it at 2 though. I find a High King Genghis is just really important, and sometimes you need to use your search out to get your Armageddon, and having this in hand already is really nice sometimes. We also have the 1 Ragnarok in here, 1 Orthos, 3 Savant Kepler, 2 Savant Thomas. You could also run this at 3. A lot of people are running this at 3, and I might put it up to there. Right now I only have it at 2 though. We have 3 Book of Moon, we have 3 Dark Contract with the Gate, 1 Enemy Controller, and 1 Dark Contract with the Witch. You could also, of course, change up the back row, run Treacherous Trap Hole instead of this, or some other combination of back row cards, Lance if you want, I guess, instead of the Book of Moon. So you can definitely change this up a little bit. Getting into the extra deck, we have the 1 Flame High King Genghis, 1 King Beowulf, we have the 1 Full Armor Photon Dragon, 1 Super Doom King Armageddon, the 1 Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon, which lets us get into the Photon Dragon, 1 Giant King Coach Giant King Trainer, and then the 1 Zombie Stein. This card is actually really important as well, giving you an extra negate on the board sometimes against certain decks like Andor and others. This card is really important to being able to win the game sometimes against those decks. Other options that you could run in the deck, DD Dog is a very popular side deck card. Usually you see this in a lot of side decks for various players. So that's one option you can go with. Maxwell is another very popular side deck card. It's great for doing piercing damage, good for getting over some defensive decks, stealing wins you wouldn't otherwise be able to get with it. Another thing you can also run is the Oracle King D Arc. This one makes us any damage that would be inflicted by, not by battle, but by a card effect, gives you life points instead, or both players, I should say, so depending on the effect. So this is going to allow you to survive in some of those games, because a huge problem this deck has is sometimes you just run out of life points with your Dark Contracts taking away 1,000 every turn. If you get both of them up, that's 2,000 life points you're losing every turn, so you'll lose games very quickly sometimes just by lowering your own life point effects, and Oracle King D Arc can help prevent that happen by giving you life points and sometimes allow you to survive OTKs you wouldn't otherwise be able to survive against certain decks. So that is definitely another option you can run. And of course, any generic rank 8s that you have, you can also run them as well. If you have Sun Dragon Heliopos, the Heraldic Sun monster, you can also run Sanafond. Any rank 8s that you have, generic rank 8s will also work in this deck too. You can also go into the other rank up level over full armor Photon Dragon. So a number of different things you can go with, change up your list at all. Either way, again, this deck has been doing really good in tournaments. I think it's going to continue to do so.
Okay,
go ahead and get into the
so
replays. We have a few games here. The first few are going to be from a tournament match. So going first, we opened up with the Dark Contract in hand. That's going to let us search for the Kepler. Usually it's the other way around, right? You summon Kepler and use it to search for the Dark Contract. But this time we already have Thomas and Armageddon in our hand. So we can actually go ahead and do our skill play here. We're able to search for the trap card, give us some protection. Activate the skill. We put the Doom King Armageddon on the top of our deck. That's going to let us put our skills in place, putting the Thomas and the Kepler on the scales, and then summoning our 2 monsters. Thomas is going to pop the other monster on the scale, allowing us to summon a 3rd level 8 from the deck, and then we go into the Coach King Giant Trainer with all 3 of them, as I said, allowing us to draw 3 cards, giving us some back row protection. I set the 2 Book of Moon because I mentioned the problem earlier with losing life points can be a huge issue, so I decided to just save the Witch for now, save the card advantage, save the cards in my hand for future plays, and start out with setting 2 Book of Moon. So our opponent has his own little pendulum scale skill, which also makes Odd Eyes so good right now. Activates it, giving him his full scales on the board, able to summon his Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon to the field, along with a Magician, but we Book of Moon it so we can't go into his XYZ plays. Sets 2 back row, we take our 1,000 damage from our spell, and then we go into our fusion monster I mentioned earlier, the High King Genghis. Again, this card is so incredibly effective for negating your opponent's back row cards. So anytime you have that Swirl Swime in your hand, you can go in for this during your turn, and your opponent has back row, you can just protect your plays. It's super important. And it also has another effect that I didn't mention earlier either. When you summon a monster, normal or special, while you have this on the board, you get to special summon a DDD monster from your graveyard. So if you put this out in the field and you have Armageddon in your graveyard after using it to fusion summon for this, you can very easily bring it back from your grave and then have 3 monsters on your board with huge attack points to go after your opponent with. So we're going to use our Searcher to grab the Orthos. Orthos is going to give us a Pendulum skill so we can Pendulum summon to the field. We're going to bring out the Thomas from our extra deck. Orthos then can be used to pop back row. He's going to activate the MST, the chain, to pop the Orthos, but that's totally okay with me because now he only has 1 back row left, and we still have our negate on the Flame High King Genghis. So it doesn't matter what his back row is at this point. We can negate it during our turn. He has no other back row to stop us with, and we're basically basically immune to his back row right now, unless it's a counter trap, which is just, there's not that many right now in the game that are being widely used. So clear out his board. He has to use the Spear Strike to search for his deck for more monsters, some more resources. Gonna Pendulum Summon again to the field. He has some cards out of his extra deck to bring, but once again, we still have a Book of Moon set to flip his thing face down. He's gonna try to use the Magician to summon it to the board, but we're gonna go ahead and pop his monster so that he can't get the special summon off, and he can't do anything except for set monsters to try to survive. At this point, we're taking more damage, so this is what I mean about, you know, taking all this damage leaves you at a point where you're taking 1,000 damage from these every turn. It leaves you at a point where you have to finish off games quickly, right? Like, you're not going to have a ton of games that last 10, 12, 14, you know, turns or more, right? These games are going to be ending in a few first turns, usually, just because of these effects. So we basically know we have to win on this turn, but again, he only has one back row set, and we have our High King Genghis on our turn, which means that we can negate that one back row. We're pretty much immune to it, so we just got to punch through his board at this point in time. And we have the contract, so we can take out the one monster. We know we can easily swing over the other monster, and then our other two can just swing forward in the game. Again, he activates a book, but we know we can negate it, so it just doesn't matter. Basically useless for him. And then we clean out his board. Easy attacks for the win. Okay, so this one was against Destiny Hero, and this one had me a little bit nervous, given that D Hero just has the searchable MSTs from their deck that can be used to, you know, get rid of your searcher and all that stuff. So going first, he's going to summon the Stratos and make a really smart play here to go for the Blast, because this can be used to chain to your spell cards or trap cards that you activate, your continuous ones anyways, and bounce them back to hand, which in effect negates their effects. It can also be used to bounce back your Pendulum Scale so that you can't get certain effects off of them. So this card's really concerning, and I was really worried about it being able to take out my Dark Contract with the gate. So he's got his skill set up, his fusion, or excuse me, his field spell set up. We got our Kepler here, though. We can normal summon that, get our gate, and we have Armageddon already in our hand, so we have tons of ways to go into stuff here. But he does have the MST to chain to destroy the Dark Contract. So we're not going to be able to get the search off of it, but again, we already have the Armageddon in hand, so we can still go for our Pendulum play. And an important thing about this, too, a really important thing to know about rulings in this game, is that you can't chain card effects to skills, right? Of course, skills are just kind of like this own little unique thing where it doesn't, like, you can't like chain card effects and like negate their activation the same way a normal card does, right? So we set our Pendulum Scales without him being able to respond to it, and because of the way the game works, obviously, you know, he just doesn't have his chance to respond to it. And then when you Pendulum Summon, the act of Pendulum Summoning is like Synchro Summoning or XYZ Summoning. You just kind of like, you do it, and then your opponent can respond to it, right? Your opponent can't, like, doesn't have a chance to like chain MST to you, you know, deciding to Pendulum Summon. So like I knew that our opponent here basically had no way to stop that, to basically stop our Pendulum Summon here with his Hero Blast. He can't, or another set MST if he had one, right? He wouldn't be able to chain MST or his monster effect to bounce back our scales. Because of the skill and the way that Pendulum Summoning works in this game, he has no way to stop that effect, you know, by chaining an MST or Hero Blast. So I knew I would be able to just put out a 3,000 attack point monster and hopefully just be able to swing over his thing for game. But of course, our opponent has the Void Trap Hole set. He's able to activate it and destroy our monster, but it sends our card right back to the extra deck. So we know we're going to be able to summon it right back to the field next turn. So set 2 back row, but he hasn't used his Hero Blast effect this turn, so he can activate it in the end phase to bounce back one of our set spell or traps here, and then during his turn use his effect again to bounce it back. But he doesn't have another monster to summon, which is huge there. We were basically just really praying that he couldn't get anything with 1,800 more attack points. He doesn't. He bounces back both things to hand, swings in for 22, but that's all he can do. Sets 2 more back row. His field spell goes back to his deck, so we still have our Pendulum Scale set up this turn. Again, Kepler's effect is negated because of the skill, so it doesn't lose its Pendulum Scale, so one more turn we're able to Pendulum Summon. We have our Searcher in hand. He is able to bounce it back when we activate, so he's smart chaining to the activation, because there's so again, if this activates twice, right? There's the actual activation of the card and then activating the effect. If you chain MST when you activate the card itself, instead of not activating the actual search effect, your opponent can just, or you as a player can play another Dark Contract from your hand and then activate that effect to search. But if you actually chain it to the search, I can't just replay it here. So like if he had just done it as soon as I activated the card and bounced it back, I would just be able to replay the Dark Contract and activate the search effect, but he's smart in waiting until I activate the card effect to bounce it back. So smart by him, but of course we're able to Pendulum Summon here, so we're able to bring out the Doom King Armageddon. He has another Void Trap Hole, sending it back to the extra deck. We're able to re-add it to our hand with the Savant Thomas, and this time we're able to set 3 back row. I went ahead and set the Orthos to protect ourselves as well. I was kind of just worried about my life points at this point, but he already used his blast effect, so we can't bounce back one of our cards during our turn. He can only bounce back one during his turn. He gets rid of one of our interruptions, but he can't get rid of the other one, so we can book a Muna's monster. He actually swings into our Orthos, taking a little bit of damage here. And this is where actually another ruling things come in big here. He mass chains into the Anki, attacks and destroys my Orthos, and usually Anki has an effect that when it destroys a monster and sends it to the graveyard, you get a searcher deck for another mass change. Then he can activate it again, fusion summon, and would have been able to swing for game, but Orthos is a Pendulum monster. It went to the pen deck, so he didn't get the mass change out of the deck. So we survived for the turn. And that's going to be just long enough here because we're able to once again search our deck with the gate that we have set, flip it up, activate it and search. He can't do anything because his blast has been turned face down. We're going to go for a fusion play, summon the Beowulf, activate the Swirl Swamp effect to summon another one from our hand. Ragnarok's effect will activate, summoning another one from our graveyard. And just like that, we have 3 monsters on the field, plus our Econ, so we can steal his monster and hit him for game with it. This deck can just spit out huge monsters like that super fast with Swirl Swime and all the various summoning effects and pen effects that you have here. Okay, so going first, again, we have the Savant Kepler in our hand. We're able to normal summon it, search for the Dark Contract with the gate. We already have the Armageddon in hand, so instead we're going to search for the Thomas, and then we'll activate our skill. It's going to put our scales up, Kepler on one hand. We're going to bring out the Savant Thomas on the other scale. We're bringing out the other Thomas here because I'm going to pop it with the Thomas from the hand. Summon this one to destroy our Pendulum scale so that we can get a 3rd level 8 out in the field. And again, we're going to XYZ summon into our Coach King Giant Trainer, which is going to let us draw 3 cards, get more back row to protect ourselves. There's the Econ. We needed at least one more thing besides the Book of Moon in hand. Deal that little bit of damage to him. And we got a second Book of Moon, so go ahead and set the 2 books. Econ sometimes better later on trying to finish games, besides just interrupting your opponent. So he searches for the card that banishes from the graveyard, and that's important too. That means I figure he already has the trap card set and is probably searching this, so I'm thinking hopefully to discard it. So I'm thinking maybe that's what's still in his hand. He's going to discard that for the trap. That's what I'm kind of hoping here. Nonetheless, so I take my 1,000 damage. Kepler's effect's negated for a turn. We'll get a search off and we'll get the Orthos, and Orthos is going to let me Pendulum Summon and also be a really important card for popping back row here, given that this is Buster Blader. Buster Blader does like to play a lot of different back row cards, and he obviously has 3 set right now, so we'll Pendulum Summon our Ragnarok. Ragnarok can let us summon from the graveyard, but he actually did set the one that banishes from the grave, surprisingly, so banishing all 3 of them. But that's okay because it just gives his monster an attack for the rest of the turn, and now we can swing over easily next turn. But he has another Buster Whelp. It's going to give him another summon. He's going to be able to Synchro Summon as well now into the Buster Dragon. Now we're in danger because if he's able to Fusion Summon with this on the board, he can completely lock us out. So we want to be able to deal with this. We go for the Book of Moon play. He has the Cosmic Cyclone to take out our other back row now, though. That's going to, of course, let him search next turn, I believe, with his skill to be able to search out his 3rd Buster Whelp. So he activates the trap card, sends 1. He now has 2 in graveyard to do his Fusion Summons. So now I figure we're in a bit of trouble with that, but that's okay because we still have massive card advantage here. We're able to use the Orthos effect to try to take out his other back row. It's a Book of Moon. Not a problem because we can just flip our monster right back up. Savant Kepler's effect to search for the trap card out of our deck. Flip up the Ragnarok. We can then go ahead and try to go ahead and clear out his board with the Ragnarok effect. Again, this he is able to Fusion Summon out of the graveyard with his trap card. But now we're going to go ahead and Fusion Summon. So 3,000 attack points, Beowulf, able to swing over whatever. We're going to use the Econ to steal his monster. He's going to Fusion Summon again. I think I probably could. I think I misplayed here by attacking over the monster first, the normal monster first instead of the fusion monster. But either way, we have the Econ to steal his fusion monster, so we can just swing over everything. Crash the 2 monsters, and we have enough damage. I think this is the only one of these that was not a tournament game. Prescience is the skill, so we got to assume that Fluffle is the deck that he's running. So, going first again, we have our Savant Kepler here, normal summon it, search for the Dark Gate. Dark Gate's going to let us search for our Armageddon King. We already have the Thomas in hand too, so we can again go for the Giant King Coach Trainer play if we like here. Go ahead and do our Pendulum Summon play, activate the skill, set the 2 scales, summon the Doom King Armageddon to the field, as well as the Thomas. Thomas pop the Pendulum Scale Thomas, summon from the deck. You guys know the drill by this point. We're going to draw 3 cards here. Try to dig into some additional back row. We got the Swirl Slime so we can Fusion Summon, but we only have the 1 Book of Moon. We didn't get any additional interruption here, so set the Book of Moon. Hopefully it doesn't have anything too crazy. You know how Fluffles are. They can definitely be nuts. So he immediately starts out really well. He has a Toy Vendor play, able to ditch the wing so that he can send it to the grave and get more draws and more pluses off of it. And he's going to be able to get tons of card advantage off of this. Able to send the Toy Vendor grave, get the additional search, activate Toy Vendor, discard, summon again, and this summon's going to let him search for his deck. So at this point, he's just racking up massive card advantage off of this, right? What is it, 6 cards in hand plus 2 more things on board. He's got 8 cards right now. He started out the turn with 5, so already plus 3 for the turn. activates the polymerization that he just searched out for his hand for the Tiger. Tiger's going to let him blow up multiple cards on our side of the field, but he left the owl on the board, right? Because he can pay 500 to fusion summon with this card as well as other monsters. So he activates to blow up our field, and I decided to go ahead and chain the Book of Moon to turn his owl face down instead of the fusion monster. Yeah, the fusion monster is going to be able to hit us for 2200 direct this turn, right? But by flipping down his owl, he's not able to fusion summon into the one that allows him to attack multiple times, which is what I'm scared about. So instead, he goes ahead and summons the Hex Seal Fusion. He goes ahead and fusions with it off into the Millennium Eyes Restrict. So he able to swing 22, but now we got to deal with this card. Really interesting because I see this in like Mass Duel and TCG, but rarely see it in Duel Links. Glad to see it in this game make an appearance. But we have the Book of Moon to take care of it, so go ahead and Book of Moon, turn it face down. At this point, we have the pendulum scales to be able to pendulum summon whatever we need. Go ahead and fusion summon, go into the Beowulf. Beowulf by itself is enough to win the game here because it does piercing damage and his monster has 0 defense, so we can just swing for 3k for the win. But we have more than enough to just clear swing through everything, even if he had a hand trap. I was worried about the Kite Roid, so I just kind of wanted to do the piercing damage to make sure that even if we did have Kite Roid, it wouldn't matter. We just swing through and win. So either way, that's all the replay videos I actually have for you guys today. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys liked the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel. Thank you guys so much. You have a wonderful rest of the day.